The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Good afternoon, I'm Patrick Christiano, and I'm here for Spotlight on the Arts. And I'm the publisher of TheaterLife.com, a website for theater buffs in New York City and the Hamptons. And we focus on cultural, social events out here in the Hamptons. And today I am really lucky. I have Jules Feiffer. Yes, the cartoonist, the author, the Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist who has had a lifetime of incredible experiences that he's going to talk to us about. And we're going to hit on the highlights of his life. And near the end of the show, we're going to bring in his new wife. He was married September 18th last year. He's going on a year. Jay-Z Holden will come in at the end and chat with us a little bit. Thank you, Jules, for coming. I am honored.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we were just Monday at Curtain Up, where you were honored with the Visionary Award, and if anything is more appropriate, I can't think of it.
That was quite thrilling, and the turnout was lovely, and it was quite moving to me. It was wonderful. It was wonderful, and a lot of friends showed up, and it was a terrific evening.
You know what I loved the most about it? When you made your acceptance speech. Do you remember what you talked about?
I remember nothing.
You talked about how everything is playful and you must learn to play all the time, and that's basically what you do.
Well, it's one of the secrets of happy aging, which I stumbled on, or it stumbled on me, was that at a certain point, you kind of give up pretending that you know everything. Or that you're in charge of anything. And you surrender to your own vulnerability and basically your own stupidity. And from the time, and this is maybe 15 years or so, that I just relaxed with the fact that I was aging fast and getting dumb faster and just went with it, things have gone much, much better.
So you mean you only started this 15 years ago, just totally relaxing into the moment and surrendering like that?
Well, since I can't remember anything, I can't confirm the accuracy of that statement.
So when did you realize you were a true visionary? Because they honored you Monday night at Joe's Pub as a visionary. Bay Street Theater did, who is going to be producing.
Well, it's. The term visionary means that they don't publish you.
No.
Visionary means that we love what you do, we don't know how to use it, we don't know how to sell it, we don't know how to market it, we think you're wonderful, come back later. Come back after you're famous. So that's, and so actually what the term visionary meant was that I had a hard time for many years making a buck and having to learn how to continue to do the work I wanted to do, which was described as prescient at the time. Not a visionary, but prescient. All of those were curse words, meaning watch out for them.
I think you're a real visionary, and I think all the things that you have done in your lifetime that have morphed from one thing to the other. You know what I found most, I got a whole pile of notes reading about you. It was like a crash course in studying for an exam, because I know you as a cartoonist, and I know you as the playwright for Little Murderers, and Knock Knock.
Little Murders.
Little Murders.
Yeah.
And Knock Knock, and I know you as the co-writer of Carnal Knowledge.
I wasn't the co-writer, I was the writer.
Oh, the writer for Carnal. See, I don't know much at all, do I?
Yeah.
That's why I have you here, to enlighten me. So what, did you co-write something, a screenplay?
No.
No.
I never co-wrote anything.
So you wrote Carnal Knowledge.
I wrote Carnal Knowledge as a play. I offered it to Mike Nichols, who was in the middle of finishing Catch-22 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He called me up after 24 hours. He said, I want to do it. I don't think it's a play. I think it's a movie.
Uh-huh.
I said, what about the language? He said, we won't have any problem. I said, give me 30 seconds. And then I said, yes.
And what did you think about in that 30 seconds?
I thought, how is it more likely to go over, either in stage or in film? And I realized that on film we'd have much more leeway, and I was pretty sure that if we did it on stage, I'd be killed. So,
So you're still here.
so it wasn't a hard choice.
So you know and well now is this your Bay Street is doing a musical of a children's book that you wrote called Man on the Ceiling.
The Man in the Ceiling.
The Man in the Ceiling. The Man in the Ceiling.
Yes.
Which was a children's book. Now, Andrew Lippa, who wrote the music for this show, he's been after you since 1994 to do this as a musical. You said no right away.
He was a terrible nag.
So what made you relent? Just because he was a nag?
No, I wrote the book. It was my first. It's a young adult novel, and I wrote it in reaction to the fact that the last play I did, which Nichols had directed, at the second stage uptown in Manhattan, called Elliot Loves, which all advance comment was, great, wonderful, this will run forever, it's brilliant, it's all of this. And then the New York Times review came in and killed it. And I said, I have a family. I can't make a living this way anymore. I have to find something else to get into as an extracurricular activity, because I was never satisfied simply doing a weekly cartoon. I needed to do more, and I loved doing theater. And I had wonderful experiences in theater, and almost as long as I loved doing cartoons, I had loved going to theater and going to films. And the act of writing plays was a great, great joy to me. But I had to rob myself of that because I knew that the critics were not kind to me generally. And I had a wonderful job in production and all of that. So I had to look for something else, and I decided I'd try a children's book about a boy cartoonist.
Which is semi-autobiographical. The character is the main character.
In the book, which became The Man in the Ceiling, the boy Jimmy, and his uncle Lester, are versions of the same person. Jimmy is a kid, and Uncle Lester is a grown-up. Each of them going through a kind of creative crisis, in that they are having trouble having their work understood, and they're having trouble fulfilling their wishes and their dreams, and dealing with what turns out to be creative failure, one after another. And this was really the story of my life at that time. But the characters I created and the family I created were generally fictional. But the truths were emotional, and Jimmy's sensibility as a boy cartoonist was totally autobiographical. But the events in the book and the events in the play never happened. Right,
but so the emotional response of the main character,
yes,
which is kind of what you do with your cartoons too, but you have an emotional response to the characters in your cartoons. Am I correct?
Yeah, you just try to figure out. Well, it's what writing always does. It's or should be doing. It's trying to use fiction to get at the truth. I mean, I found over and over again as a kid in my reading that the real truths that came to me, or the real discoveries, the real insights, the aha moment when a little light bulb went off in your head, came not out of reading nonfiction or journalism, but came when I stumbled on a novel and discovered in that novel about characters in another country, in another century, the story of my life, over and over and over again, and that these moments were in fiction. And so the notion of fictionalizing your own events and finding different ways of stating them that weren't the documentary truth, was the best way for me of telling a story.
But it also makes it more interesting.
Well, for me, what I loved about also inventing a story is that if I was autobiographical, I know what happens. I know what ends up. It's boring.
To you.
Well, but I like to be as entertained by what I do as an audience or readers are. So I don't want to know.
I understand.
I don't want to know what happens until I get to writing it.
Right. So now Now, Andrew finally convinced you to do this, and Jeffrey Seller, who produced Rent and Hamilton, am I correct?
Yes, but let me go back. Andrew Lippa had on a show at the time.
He had what?
He had a musical on at the time.
Okay, yes.
The Wild Party.
Oh, that was fabulous. Yes.
And the Wild Party was a poem that came back into prominence after many years because it was illustrated by another cartoonist, Art Spiegelman of Mouse fame. So the cartoon background for all of this is, Art did a gorgeous job putting together the Wild Party. Andrew picked up Art's Wild Party and decided he wanted to make a musical out of it. And then somebody gave him a copy of The Man in the Ceiling, and he said he wanted to make a musical of that, and he invited me to the Wild Party the weekend before it closed, and I went with very mixed feelings because I was used to being more let down by theater than not, and I was blown away. I thought it was just brilliant.
It was crazy. It was wild.
Just
It was
extraordinary.
exactly that.
And we went out afterwards, and he proposed musicalizing The Man in the Ceiling, and unfortunately, I had earlier decided to do it as a musical, but I don't want to get into all of this. But
this is technically your first musical, right?
Yeah, well, yes, it wasn't the first musical I tried, but it was technically the first musical.
The first musical that's actually being produced and given.
That's right. That's right.
A full run.
Well, we didn't have a production yet, but it was, but Andrew and I were going to collaborate. But first, I had to get rid of my previous collaborator, and that took a couple of years.
Oh.
And but by the time Andrew came back to me and we started working on it,
So how long have you been working on it now?
85 years, I think.
No, with Andrew.
Well, Andrew says it's 17 years, which is a shock to me, because I didn't think Andrew was much over 17. But it's a long time, and at the time he was afraid. 17 years ago, he was afraid I might be too old to work on this. So and here we are.
No, but now it's morphed and changed. So it's not just like the book too. What they've.
It's not like the book. It's not like the earlier drafts we did of the musical. It kept redefining itself and refining itself, and later this summer in July, I'm going to give a talk at Stony Brook Southampton College on just that, on how this play, which turned into this musical, started out as one thing and then became something else and became something else.
But that's what happened with your life.
But always adapted from the original material in the book. And as it changed and as it morphed, as different as it got, it became more like the book rather than less like the book, in spirit and emotion and in the story it had to tell.
Oh, that's really cool. But your life has morphed like that too. From one thing, I mean, like you started out as a cartoonist.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, and you started out as a cartoonist.
Yes.
And what I found
But
was
I remain a cartoon. I never stopped being a cartoonist.
right. But you've added stuff on to what you do, so it's become an accumulation of things, and it's expanded upon who you really are as a human being, and expanded on what you have to say as a person, or as an artist at the same time.
Well, who I really am as a human being isn't quite decided yet, but it's a work in progress.
And what I found fascinating about reading up on your life was how you got your first job at 17 as an assistant to Will Eisner. Is that correct?
Yeah, Will Eisner was the unrecognized, but was the best cartoonist in the comic book world, in the business.
But what I found
and the most innovative.
What I found the most interesting was that you initially wanted to be like him, and when you discovered you couldn't draw like him, you figured out how, your limitations always helped you expand who you were.
Well, that's the weirdness of it. I mean, that when you're a kid, you have these dreams of grandeur, and which are unaffected by reality. And as reality starts clocking in, and one dream after another dissipates because I did not have the technical skills to be the realistic kind of cartoonist, doing realistic drawing that I so admired in other artists, and I couldn't do that.
But it took you to some place that was even bigger.
Out of desperation.
It's fascinating, how it becomes the limitation. You use the limitations to become And the mother of invention.
Well, that's, and about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I wrote a memoir called Backing into Forward, which is just that story. That how essentially all of the stuff that developed me and developed my career and made me known for what I do was me making up for the things I couldn't do. It was making up for failure. So I backed into all of the good stuff, which I didn't really want to do. I wanted to be somebody else.
Yes, so it was about learning to be who you really are, is what the message is.
Yes.
Exactly. But now Bay Street's doing this new musical. It starts previews. You know the date? May 30th, is it?
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, but it opens on June 3rd.
It opens June 3rd. Yes.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Seller, who was the producer of Rent and the current smash hit Hamilton, is directing it.
Yes, and it's first directed.
How is it working with him?
Well, from the beginning, working with Jeffrey. Andrew and Jeffrey grew up together in Michigan. Andrew Lippa and Jeffrey Seller.
Oh, so they're buddies.
And they were boyhood buddies, and when this was a dead project, and I had already moved out to the Hamptons as my permanent home, after 2 or 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, I forget. I'm bad at this. Andrew called me up and he said, "My friend Jeffrey Seller is interested in directing The Man in the Ceiling, and I want you to meet with him and see what you guys think." And so he arranged a meeting, and my memory is that Jeffrey and I met in a restaurant in New York alone, and I was very dubious about that. I was very dubious about being dragged back in to the theater world, which I was happy to be out of. I was living out in the Hamptons. I was working on graphic novels, and I loved the form because I did everything. I didn't love theater anymore because I had lost a lot of my hearing and mobility, and everything was kind of at a disadvantage. So this was a tough thing to get back into. But after 5 minutes talking to Jeffrey, I knew he was somebody I liked and wanted to work with, and he made everything feel easy and accessible and productive. And from the moment we met, I liked him, and I knew he was honest, and I knew I could work with him. And the three of us,
No, he's a smart man.
the three of us working together has just been a wonder from the beginning.
Yeah, well, we're all looking forward to seeing this. I'm going to come to the opening
No
night.
more than I.
I can't wait to see it. Barry's been at the different, things. And I wanted to hit the highlights of your life, but we can't do it in 20
Too late.
minutes. No, we need an hour and a half. And, you also won an Academy Award for Best Animated Short for Monroe, is that?
Monroe.
Yeah.
Monroe.
But we have another highlight we want to bring out. You got married last year, September 18th.
Yes, I believe I did.
Yeah, I had a competing show, so I didn't get to come, and you took away a lot of my audience going to your wedding, by the way. I did something at Guildhall, but so we want to bring out...
We had a wonderful wedding in East Hampton.
And we're going to bring out your wife now, J.Z. Holden. Yes, come on, J.Z.
Hi. How are you?
I am great.
Great to see you.
Same here. Have a seat.
Great to see you too.
I'm told you're my wife.
I'm told you're my husband. It's remarkable.
So Jay-Z is the playwright herself. Yes, and she has a new play. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I started writing the play. Jules and I went to the American Academy in Berlin in 2014. And about the second or third night we were there, we went to see Three Penny Opera at Kurt Weill's theater company.
The Berliner Ensemble.
The Berliner Ensemble. And it just turned out that one of our local geniuses had directed it.
Who's
from
that?
the Watermill Center.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and I was just completely taken by it. And there was a story that I had been working on as a novel that I suddenly felt should be a play after seeing that. And the very next day, I started to write it. And it's been a work in progress. You know that when you write a full-length play, it takes time, and you have to put it away for several months, and then life happens, and then you take it out again in between writing other things. And so now I've changed it substantially, but
And you're having a reading of it.
I'm
It's
having
coming
a
up.
reading of it, yes, at the Players Club in New York on June 20th.
How exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. And also, Kristen Lohman, who is also a Bridgehampton resident and is married to Harris Yulin, is going to be the main actress. She has the main role.
Are you impressed?
I didn't need this play to be impressed, but yes, I am impressed. But Joan also previously wrote a novel called Illusion of Memory, and that was also impressive. It was impressive too because it was dedicated to me, but that was just.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, how sweet. When did that come out?
It came out 3 years ago.
So how is your new married life?
Fabulous. Can't remember a time when I've been happier.
Oh, and you?
And that's the way it is. That's the way it is. We lucked into Joan somewhat late in life, and me very, very late in life. Both the people and the locale that we were meant to be in, and we are thrilled to be enjoying this to the hilt at this very moment.
Well, you both look really happy too. It shows.
It's a miracle as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a total miracle, and I'm very grateful.
Well, he sounds like a lot of fun to be with. He sounds like he's in the moment quite easly today.
Well, I'm not always fun.
I said a lot of fun. I didn't say always. But so now you've been to rehearsals of this Man
I
in the
have.
Ceiling?
Yes.
And have you seen it? And what do you think?
I've seen parts of this production.
Uh-huh.
What I'd like to say is, I've witnessed the coming together of these three incredible creative entities, which is Jeffrey Seller and Andrew Lippa and Jules Feiffer. And I've been in the business all my life. I have never seen this level of love and mutual respect and lack of ego, putting the project first. It is something incredible to behold, and I feel privileged to be a witness. And I think it's given Jules so much joy. And it's the collaboration between these three remarkable human beings and their willingness to throw something away and bring something else in if it doesn't work. No attachment, just, I saw it, do you think it works? Nah, I don't think it works. Okay, let's get rid of it. Let's get something else in there. And I think the easiness and the confidence inherent in working that way is a rare phenomenon. And I think the show will reflect it. I think that's why people are going to walk away feeling absolutely translucent.
But that's what it should be about always, and seldom is. I found a similar relationship working with Mike Nichols. It's about when you work with brilliant and first-rate people, it's always about the product itself. It's not about what I contributed. It's not about that last line that I came up with. It's not about how good I am. It's because how good you are is unimportant if the piece doesn't pull together. So it's not about one's contribution. It's about the work. And this is transparently what we have been doing from the beginning. We all enjoy the company of each other, the presence of each other, and we feed off each other. And it's only about the work. It's only about what works. And if this doesn't work, let's get rid of it, or move it, or turn it around, or put it on its head. Let's try something, try this or try that. And whatever works is in it, and it doesn't matter who came up with the idea. We all came up with it. It couldn't have been.
It's a mutual
collaboration.
energy that comes in.
Yeah,
Because you spoke at Joe's Pub the other evening about a scene that you thought was so good, and they were working on it that day, and then later on they said, this isn't working, could you rewrite it? And, your initial reaction was the hairs went up, and then, you relaxed into it, and you were ready to go home that evening and start writing it.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's interesting you point that out, because at something like 1 a.m, I couldn't sleep. I went to the computer, I rewrote the scene. It was an entirely new scene. I didn't have any idea that I was going to get into it. I read it over, edited it, and then sent it to Andrew and Jeffrey, and heard nothing back. And when I went to rehearsal the next morning in New York, I discovered it was being put into the show.
How fabulous. And we only have a short time left. The other thing I wanted to talk about, too, besides the new show, the little boy.
Isn't he remarkable?
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Jonah.
What's his name?
Jonah Briscoe.
He such maturity and he sang so beautifully, and he was so having so much fun doing it.
And he's been with this project now for 3 years.
He
started when he was much younger.
We went to try out the show in Palo Alto at a place called Theater Works out there, which is the equivalent of the Joe Papp Public Theater in New York,
Right.
but it's in Silicon Valley, so it has a lot of money. And he was who they cast as in that production of the readings, of the series of readings. And he was just wonderful then, and he's infinitely better now.
Yeah, you get better the more you do it. He was a revelation to me at Joe's Pub. I really can't wait to see this. I am excited. It opens at Bay Street on January 3rd.
June 3rd.
June 3rd. I keep saying January. I did this in the last show.
Maybe it'll open in New York on January 3rd.
I just have to get with the program and not be afraid of making mistakes. I guess my memory is going too.
Now,
It opens on June 3rd, not
Bay
January,
Street.
June 3rd at Bay Street Theater. And do you know, it runs until, do you have the
The
June
25th.
25th.
till June 25th. So,
and God willing, it will move to New York. We will see.
and God
But
willing,
what-
it'll move to New York.
But we cannot
8
overlook
seconds.
the fact that that Andrew
5
Lippa,
seconds.
while writing the score and
We're gonna have to say goodbye.
also is a featured performer, one of the stars of the show, and is extraordinary. He's brilliant.
We're off.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That was great.
That
Thank you.
was terrific.